Chapter 20. Anthony revealed. These words and my kindness sealed our fates forever, as well as the fates of countless other people that I would never even meet. I gave him a part of me without knowing how it would really affect the rest of my life, but I figured that I would get it back at some point because I felt that we were friends. Once in the hall, I went to Lucas's room and found him there, already freshened up for lunch. The morning encounter with Anthony was still clear in my mind, and I felt some intense curiosity about him, so I began asking Lucas about it. So, when Anthony writes lyrics, does he ever write about his dreams? I queried, easing my way out on a limb. Lucas seemed slightly vexed at this question, saying,
"No, he doesn't write about his dreams. That's ridiculous. Why would he do that?"
he snapped. Feeling a little hurt and discouraged by this answer and the tone of his voice, I said, "Well, I write poetry and lyrics, and sometimes I write about my dreams. I just wondered, that's all." Something was eating at Lucas as he touched my arm and said,
"Listen, I have to tell you something."
"Okay, what is it?" He grew quiet and contemplative.
"I'm married."
My eyes widened in shocked surprise, while my face stayed placid and I swallowed, listening, not even beginning to understand how to respond.
"I talked with her today, and I feel guilty. But you shouldn't, because you didn't know."
"Well, of course I didn't know. There was no way for me to know that." "Okay," I said quietly, still listening to the rest of what I felt was coming. He continued,
"You are not responsible, I am. I didn't cheat, really, because of you. All we did was make out, and you made me feel really good, like I was in high school again, so I am grateful to you. Don't worry, it won't change anything. Everybody still wants you to stay around and hang out. It's been great spending time with you. We just won't be together that way anymore."
Again, with nothing else to say, as I was trying to process that he was a married man, even if we really didn't do much of anything at all, I replied, "Okay." He looked into my eyes very seriously, saying, "I'm telling you this because I respect you and I respect her." "Thank you," I said.
"How are you feeling about it?"
he asked. Well, how was I feeling about it? Let's see. I felt shocked and troubled, but I realized that he was right, that I was not to blame at all. I wasn't in agreement with his faulty reasoning about not crossing a line in his marriage, though I did feel the need to part as friends. He seemed to realize that he didn't want to be unfaithful because of me. I was happy about this part of the equation. This was the inexplicable dichotomy of life on the road opposed to quote-unquote real life back home. Out here on the borderland, known as the road, lines were blurred between fantasy and reality. Everyone needs a sense of belonging and purpose, to feel loved, to be touched, and validated as a human being on the most primary level. That is why so many rock stars and roadies end up in half relationships, so far from home, with people that they care for, that they would never have met otherwise. Just like military brats. When you bonded, it was intense, immediate, and irrevocable. Above all else, the connections were magnified by the power of music. I sighed, thinking that his marriage was not my business, though my informed choices now were, saying, "I'll be okay, so we can hang out as friends now then."
"Yes," he said, "friends, and you know you are not to blame."
"Yes, I know," I replied with great certainty. Truthfully, I liked him very much, but the potential for real romance was not there at all. So this revelation was a relief in a way, that I wouldn't have to be concerned with that anymore, because I didn't want to hurt his feelings.
"That's not all," Lucas said. "I'm sorry I snapped at you, but everyone is really stirred up because Tim just announced that he's leaving the band."
I watched his troubled face and listened with concern as he went on.
"People are freaking out and feeling sad about it, and no one knows how it's going to affect the band or the crew. He said that he's going to finish out this tour, and then he's going to resign, and they will have to move forward without him. It's a really big deal, because he's been with Caesar from the very beginning, way before Anthony came along. Caesar and Tim are the founding members of Voyage."
So all hell was breaking loose, and this was going to profoundly affect the entire chemistry of the band. It was a major blow, with Tim being part of the core. "Wow, that is a big deal," I said.
"Yeah."
Lucas sighed. I paused to breathe with him, realizing the severity of the loss of a key component in the creative process. Tim was an extremely gifted, seasoned musician. As a keyboard player, he contributed so much to Voyage for years, both musically and lyrically. He shared the lead vocals with Anthony on several of their songs and would absolutely be missed. Did he say why he was leaving? I asked.
He said that he wants to go in a different direction musically and spend more time with his family. Touring is taking too much of a toll on his relationship. He loves his girlfriend, and they are going to get married.
Well, that's cool, I said. They're a good couple. I liked them both when we met.
Yeah, they are, Lucas added. But it's not good for the band to have to replace him. It's going to put even more pressure on everyone.
Yeah, I sighed. Yeah, it will. This was Rockstar 101 that should have been titled Buckle Up. I was involved, however briefly, with a married man. The keyboard player was leaving the band, and the singer and guitarist seemed to each have feelings for me. Could it be any more confusing? This was not what I signed up for. But here it was, inevitability staring me in the face. I told Lucas that I needed some time to process everything, so I was going down to the lobby to walk around and get some perspective. He finally loosened his tight, yet illusory, invisible grip, saying, "Come back when you're ready for lunch." "Okay," I said. I left the dimly lit room without my books or purse, gripping my cigarette and lighter, more ready than I had ever been in my entire life to go have a smoke. It felt as though life had suddenly exponentially hit hyperdrive. I was now actively learning how to walk through an emotional minefield while remaining calm, cool, and more or less collected. I glided through the hallway to the elevator with my head reeling. It was there when I arrived, to greet me, inviting me in, with open doors and no waiting at all. I endured the long ride down to the lobby, lost in thought. I reviewed everything that had happened and reached the same conclusion again about Caesar, Anthony, Lucas, and the band. When the doors opened to the lobby, I walked out and saw in the distance ahead that Anthony, in synchronous serendipity, was sitting at the bar speaking with Rennie, who managed to be quite invisible most days. I walked slowly over to the bar with a sobering new outlook and understanding, feeling soft and vulnerable. It was obvious to me that they were in the middle of a very deep conversation. Anthony seemed sad and deeply serious as he finished his sentence to Rennie, who had asked how she was doing. Anthony noticed my quiet arrival and was completely unfazed by it. Perhaps because he got me back at the press breakfast, and now there was peace between us. He stared into the space in front of him, eyes glazed over, just like they had been when he was looking at me that first night, sitting on the bed. Responding to Rennie, he said, "She's not so great. She's feeling shaky about everything, and she doesn't know where she stands." He paused with a sigh of resignation before continuing, "And I don't know what to do about it," he added quietly. It was poetic that he was speaking about his girlfriend, the one that shared my name, as I waded into the deeper waters and stopped quietly and respectfully. I was ready for any reaction, but he obviously wanted me to hear what he was saying, because he spoke quite candidly about his personal life directly in front of me, like he wanted me to know. He glanced at me briefly, several times during his discourse, allowing me in again, with a kind of fragility in his face, as the truth tumbled out. He continued to speak about it, and by his own words, he was feeling confused as well about everything, including their relationship. These were unguarded moments, with just the three of us at the bar and no one listening or in proximity. I empathized with him. He felt almost like an observer in his own life, watching as the band was gaining some traction and on their way up where Rennie and the label wanted them to be. Meanwhile, his personal life was falling apart. As Lucas and Bindi had told me on the bus, this band was a touring band, and they were on the road constantly with no provision for a break except for this and the one that was coming up in about 2 weeks. They were here in Frankfurt for a week, but still doing some promo work and hadn't had any real downtime since last Christmas. They were road-weary, and sometimes they didn't even know where they were or when they went to sleep or woke up in the morning. It was the life that so many people dreamed of having, but the reality was hard to handle without losing yourself in the process. Lucas described Anthony as having gone from nothing to suddenly having everything. Now the band's success was riding on Anthony's voice, even more so with the loss of Tim. The only real path going forward was for Anthony to shoulder the burden of all the lead vocals. What do you do when millions of dollars are riding on you and your voice? His relationship back home was floating in limbo, and I reminded him of everything that he wanted, but felt that he couldn't have, because unlike Tim, he was not ready to give up the dream. This journey would require that he sacrifice his personal life for the sake of the band. I noticed an ashtray right next to his left hand, so I gently reached over and ever so lightly touched his hand with my own as I spoke. I made contact long enough to convey my feeling of concern for him and what he had just shared. Then gently and effortlessly, without thought, I allowed my fingers to fall away toward the clean ashtray, caressing the place between his wrist and hand slightly. It was the smallest of gestures, yet it spoke volumes silently, as the biodynamics of touch danced through his veins. "Do you mind if I take this?" I asked softly, tiptoeing carefully around his bared open heart. My touch pulled him back from his faraway place of confusion. In response, he turned and looked at me speechlessly, eyes widening, with the expression of astonishment playing on his face. Our eyes were again reaching out in silence when I spoke. "Do you mind if I use this?" As we looked at each other, he realized that he was required to respond. "Yes, sure," he stammered. As I watched the connection that he struggled to make from his hand to his heart, I honored his disclosure of the intimate details of his private life through simple touch, a gesture of empathetic compassion without saying a single word about it. The public Anthony and the private Anthony were two vastly different people. The mask was off for me now. He didn't tease me or admonish me about smoking, though I was prepared for the possible onslaught. It was obvious by his visage that he couldn't quite wrap his head around what had just happened between us. In many ways, it was infinitely more durable than a kiss might have been. I moved the ashtray and placed it a respectful distance away, then lit my cigarette. Anthony continued talking to Rennie, glancing sideways at me, something that I'm sure did not escape Rennie's attention. There was an unspoken trust between us as he described the difficulties with his longtime girlfriend and how being on the road was placing a stranglehold on their relationship. She was feeling insecure about the entire situation and was uncertain if she could carry on with it being the way that it was. He cared for her, I could tell, but he was going through something that was changing him from the inside out. Sometimes getting your dream gives you more trouble than not, and I could see that he was a man conflicted, almost like a drowning man, being pulled under by the weight of it all. It was fascinating that there was such a strong correlation between being an army brat and being a rock and roll road soldier. I was completely used to an accelerated bond with people because that was the bittersweet of being an American dependent stationed overseas. It was simply an expected, natural state of being, knowing that everyone would come and go so quickly. Though the linear movement of time charted several days and nights, it was the same dynamic with road-weary rock stars. It felt beginningless and endless, as if it had always been there. We were all connected now, for better or for worse, maybe even forever. I could see Anthony's course and heading as easily as predicting the sunrise in my one song. I had already told Caesar about the band's meteoric rise to come, just like was written in my song, "The sun will rise today." As I pondered this, the conversation was shifted to a different topic, so I crushed out my cigarette and excused myself to go to the bathroom. Thoroughly saturated by Anthony's feelings, I was quickly in and out, not wanting to lose track of him yet again. I now had so much more to say to him than ever before. When I saw that he had left the bar, I politely said goodbye to Rennie and headed to the elevator, hoping he would be there. That was where it all happened.